Welcome to Navigating Your Retirement. I'm your co-host, Tony Shore. I am excited to be here today because Travis Chance is our host, and he always has a lot of great information for us. Travis, how are you doing today?
Tony, I am well. I'm not gonna lie though. I'm a little bit bummed. This is my season of discontent because there's a pretty long time period between, for me, the sports that I like. Right.
Yes,
So
same.
the weekends are not quite the same. Football season's over. I'm sure there's a lot of dads and a lot of listeners out there, even some female probably, that are like, yeah, football season's kind of a bummer, and baseball season's right around the corner. But it's that February, March where it's like you got basketball, and that's pretty much it.
Yeah.
As you know, from meeting me in past. I'm a tall guy, but I got about a 10-inch vertical jump. So basketball's never been my forte.
It's about 9 more inches than I got as far as jumping. My vertical is not so good, Travis.
Yeah, not really a big basketball guy, but yeah. Other than that, doing well. The kids are finally done with some of their activities for a little bit, horseback and such. So it's a little bit of a lull for us, but spring's right around the corner, and I'm sure we'll be busy here in a very quick, short amount of time.
Well, sure. I'm the same way with football as my sport. It's what I played I played football in high school, even in junior college when right out of high school.
I'm thinking free safety, wide receiver. What do you think?
They didn't let me anywhere near the offensive side of the ball, Travis. I was on the defense, and I just my eyes followed the ball, and I just they said, hit whoever has the ball as hard as you can, and that's what I did. Yeah. Yeah, I was actually nose tackle. I was one of the smaller nose tackles ever on my team.
I could see that. Get low. Yeah. I could see that.
I did. I got low and just boom. A lot of those centers were tough, though. I got that was rough. That's a rough position. But I love defense. I wasn't any great player. I just had fun with it. But I do miss football, and my wife is a huge football fan. Of course, we both grew up in Minnesota, so we're Vikings fans. So you can all feel sorry for us now. The struggle is real.
You know, the Vikings, and we don't need to get too far into this, but I gotta say this. And like you said, Travis, you're always good for a rant. So so I really wonder, with the great train robbery, with the Herschel Walker trade with the Cowboys, right? And now y'all did it again. You gave away Sam Darnold for literally, Mr. Glass.
JJ Walker.
Yeah, he can't stay on the field to save his life. Bless his heart.
No.
I mean, Tony, what in the absolute, it's like, oh my gosh, you guys are one quarterback away. Thought what you were going to be able to get there with Brett Favre for a period of time. But it's like, why can Minnesota the front office not make better quarterback decisions? Come on, man. Y'all had literally he was one game away from taking you to the Super Bowl. And then he goes back to the Super Bowl with the Seahawks and wins. So
the guy who made that decision, the GM who made that decision, is fired.
Well, as he should be.
Immediately after the season, he was fired. So they have been making some changes. Hopefully that'll help. Well, hey, you know what? We started a topic last week, Travis, and I loved it. Don't let your legacy become a lawsuit. Well, nobody wants a lawsuit. But also for all of us out there, putting off estate planning, and it can lead to really bad things for your loved ones, for you and your spouse, or your loved ones especially, right?
Tony, last week we talked about the beginning stage was the estate plan, right? And people think estate planning is just about death. It's not just about death. It's about providing clarity. It's about providing protection, about essentially providing a last love letter to your heirs, your churches, your charities, etc., in a legal format, in something that can be followed to your wishes and to your specifications. And then also one of the biggest things that I feel estate planning does and I think this is valid. If you don't do proper estate planning, you are essentially saying to your heirs or saying to yourself that you trust the government to understand your family better than you do. I don't trust that. I'm
No.
sorry. That is not something. That's not a bridge I can cross.
Courts and attorneys aren't going to cut it.
It's well, I think I even mentioned it last week. One of my favorite lines of all time from Dodgeball. That's a bold strategy, Cotton. Let's see if that works out. Jason Bateman, great quote, but it works here too. That's a bold strategy. It's not going to work. Right. It's not going to work. You have to be intentional about what you're doing. I'm not going to go back through everything from last week. That'd be a great opportunity for those. If you're just catching us now, catch last week's show. But we talked about the different individuals, the charities, the trust, the business entities, creating liquidity in case, God forbid, something happens, so you don't have to sell in a fire sale. We talked about all those things. But this week, Tony, we're going to talk about the real drama, the danger of unclear instructions, because that's where I think the rubber meets the road. Because let's face it, if you have unclear wishes, or maybe it's up for interpretation, or it's not put down on paper, and maybe there are private conversations between kids and grandkids, then that gets a little blurred, right? Because then it's like, well, mom told me this, or dad told me this. Did he say that with the best of intentions, or did he mean that was his final bequest? Because
sure,
I'm gonna throw it out there, and it is what it is. How many times did you ever go to your grandparents' house and you always felt like the favorite? Probably pretty often.
Yep.
Right.
Oh yeah.
Because they loved every one of their grandkids the same, but they made you feel like you were the favorite. Right.
Yeah.
So if there's four, there can't be four favorites in the grandkids. Right. They loved everybody the same.
But Travis, in my case, I was the favorite.
Well,
I mean, let's be real.
Let's face it. I was. So, I mean, there's that. Right. But in most cases, if we weren't delusional this morning, we'd probably be in a little different state of mind. So
sure.
But this is what turns Thanksgiving into a freaking courtroom episode, right? Because you start getting the little zingers going back and forth. And that's why I tell folks all the time, if you really want to think about the benefit of estate planning, it's making sure that Thanksgiving and Christmas still go on after you're gone.
Right.
Because if you are unclear, if you don't provide that level of descriptive execution of what you want to happen, that is exactly what's going to happen. I'll give you a personal, just a personal tidbit, and then I won't go too far in depth. But one of the most disappointing parts of my life personally is my aunt, whom I love till the day she died, but she was so upset with my grandmother. Whenever my grandmother was the second to go, she was so upset with my grandmother that she never talked to my brother and I the rest of our life. Like when my grandmother passed away, my grandmother said, "This is what I want to happen. This is what I think is fair." It may not have been equal, but she felt like what she did for my aunt in life, that was essentially giving her inheritance ahead of time. My father, who passed away before I was in college, I was 18. Basically his share, that's what my grandparents left to my brother and I. And it was such a drama that it splintered our family and fractured our family for the rest of our life. And I'm telling you this because, folks, I eat my own cooking. I'm not trying to tell you this because it's something I read in a book. It's something I lived personally. I mean, I literally have cousins that grew up almost as close as my brother and were like a brother and a sister that I don't talk to anymore because they literally have just taken her position and disowned one side of our family.
Yeah.
It is so hard.
Happened to my dad and his brother.
It
They
is so
both thought
hard.
my grandpa told them they could have the truck. They because of that, because
Yep.
it wasn't clear, they don't talk to each other anymore, and that family was tight.
But
4 kids, 2 of them aren't talking because there wasn't proper planning done and communication.
But it sounds simple. It's like,
It does.
when the grandparents, and I'm just using mine for example, when the grandparents are alive, they say, this is what I want, and it's just because it's the way I want it. Well, they had the best of intentions.
Sure.
But it literally did something that they wish, I know, and deep in my heart, I know that if they could have made other arrangements to make it more clear, to have these conversations, it could have saved our relationship.
Yeah.
But the thing that my grandparents were really big on is like Sunday dinner, probably like a lot of you guys out there. And Tony, I know you growing up, probably the same thing.
Yep.
Getting the family together, making sure there was that bond. Well, that bond broke because things like real estate, land, houses, vehicles, car, or, collectibles, cash, all those things. We like to think that, oh, it just doesn't mean that much and they'll be okay with it. No, that's not how that works. But it sounds simple, and this is why it's really not. And this is why I'm glad we're having this conversation, because I hate to say it. Hopefully, I mean, it's not fun for me to admit that that's a part of my past and a part of our history. But hopefully, if someone hears that, they can look at it and say, yeah, I know where he's coming from. I've heard that before, or I've experienced that before, and I'm not going to do that to my next generation. And that's why full disclosure, I'm getting real raw this morning. I went to my estate planning attorney, and we've already started to do it for our girls. They're in like elementary school, so it's like, it's a little early. No, it's not, because I'm not going to put them in that position because of my failure to plan. Right. And my estate planning attorney actually said, well, damn, Travis, you're getting a little bit, pugilistic or getting a little bit like overly specific. And I said, I don't believe I am. I said, because number one, they're my assets, and I'm going to distribute them the way I want to, or the way I feel that they should be distributed. And if they want to inherit them, they can inherit them my way. But number two, I'm making sure there's nothing left unsaid, so that there's no interpretation. And that way there's no hard feelings of saying, well, dad meant for me to get this, mom meant for me to get that. No, that is where, guys, you're making a mistake if you leave it to that degree. You have got to make sure that you are being clear, concise, and to the point.
And you got to communicate it clearly, and it has to be in writing. You have to include it in the will. You also, as they get older, you have to include them in the discussions, have them meet your estate planning attorney and your financial advisor, and make sure everyone's on the same page. And that's what my grandfather, he never discussed money or anything with anyone, because that was his generation, and that was a mistake. Now there's family disharmony.
Well, let me throw another one at you. So, just the basic, if you don't have an extended family, like, or a blended family, if you will, just the basic is hard enough. What happens if you have stepchildren?
Yeah.
What happens if you have second marriages and first children? What happens if one child passes away? Which in our case, that was the linchpin, because her kids, in my opinion, now I don't know this because we don't communicate, obviously, but I felt like that was the linchpin, is that her kids felt like everything should go to my aunt, and my dad's basically not there, so therefore his part shouldn't go to anybody. It should just go to the surviving child. But what happens if one child passes away? How is that person's part going to be distributed? What if one is estranged? What if they don't associate with the family? And then all of a sudden they haven't been there for years, and whenever the wheel's red, they pop back up, and it's like, hey, where's my part? Or, should you do equal shares? Should you do, when you're naming beneficiaries, should you name things like per stirpes and per capita?
Yeah.
Per stirpes just means by the bloodline. That's essentially the way it is. So if you have 2 children, they have 2 children, the one child dies, 2 children inherit the other parent's part. per stirpes, by the
Yep.
bloodline.
Yep.
Per capita, that would have been what I just described, where if one child passes away, doesn't matter about the bottom bloodline, it's just 100% would go to the surviving spouse or surviving child.
Yep.
And when you do these kinds of designations, the legal wording matters. How you direct that. Okay, you can't say I want my jewelry or I want my collectibles or my baseball card collection or my gun collection divided fairly. What the hell does fair mean? What does fairly mean? According to who, Tony?
Right.
These are the kinds of things, if you leave it to the government to decipher, it's like, what does that mean? Does fair mean equal? Does fair not mean equal? What is that? That is up for interpretation. And when you have a situation where emotions are going to run high, grief turns into suspicion. We all know all of a sudden it's like, you had a conversation with mom or dad whenever maybe they weren't making good decisions. What? Are you kidding me? But Tony, that kind of stuff happens all the time.
Yep.
And you see siblings that don't talk anymore. You see people that literally, like I said, grew up together and literally have no contact because of things like, who gets grandma's house that neither one of them are ever going to live in. But it's like, who gets the family house? Yeah. Who gets the jewelry? Who gets the business? Say they had a small business. Who gets the business shares? Yeah. Right? May never work in it, but who gets the value? Who gets even the furniture, the little knickknacks,
antiques and knickknacks?
You heard your grandma talk about her knickknacks, right? I'm sure every grandma had knickknacks, right? little figurines around the house. Yep. Who honestly thinks that they're going to get into these emotional discussions with that? Or with those issues, but it happens all the time. And it's not because they're greedy, it's because the instructions were unclear. You don't define your intent clearly and you force your children to interpret it. But interpretation is almost always going to lead to stress and conflict.
Yep.
You cannot be that ambiguous. You cannot be that unfocused whenever you start doing the planning process.
Yeah. Make lists, talk to both of them, have both. My grandparents had all three of their daughters walk through on my mom's side. Their three girls, they all walked through their house. They agreed to sell the farm and split it 3 ways. And they decided the per stirpes, they did it all and had it all written out. And it was thanks to my mom, because she's a CPA, a bookkeeper, and really organized. And she had a written spreadsheet. And they walked through and everybody agreed on everything except my grandfather's Mason's ring. He was in the Masons and he had a Mason's ring. They fought over that.
I can imagine.
After he died, because that's one thing. It was on his hand, so it's not something in the house. When they did the walkthrough and wrote everything down, I really wanted this, and they agreed, okay, you get this, I'll take that. And they all agreed. And so they thought, okay, we're avoiding all that. And then it comes down to something crazy like his Mason's ring, because he was wearing it. Right. I mean, it sounds silly, but
and how do you divide the ring into thirds?
You don't. Yeah. One of them didn't care, and the other 2 both really wanted it. So yeah.
Well, clear planning eliminates guesswork. And guesswork, honestly, that's where the resentment and that's where it comes in, and it breaks up the family peace.
Yeah.
And Tony, we can talk all day about, the immediate nuclear family, right? Just the immediate brothers and sisters and aunts and uncles, etc. But I'll be quite honest, in the world we live in, it's becoming more and more of a rule and not the exception, that we see quite often the introduction of blended families. Because, I mean, let's face it, the divorce rate in our country, do you know what that is?
It's a lot.
It's almost half. It's 50, it's almost 50%.
Yeah.
So the probability or possibility of having a blended family come into play is also very likely. I mean, it's maybe not a certainty for a lot of folks,
but it's more and more common
as
time goes on. Yeah.
And that's where estate planning needs to really be defined and really needs to be exact, because, when you talk about, for instance, getting remarried, what happens when you have children from a previous relationship? What happens whenever, you bring in multiple kids, or what happens when you have multiple kids and then maybe you guys get married early enough in life where there's one, like, the second marriage
Shared
has
child.
one child, and
Yep.
then the first marriage from the husband has a child, and the first marriage from the wife has a child. Well, all of a sudden you got three, but you have one that is represented by both sides, and one that's literally a blended family, or
Yeah.
one on each side. That could get a bit convoluted, right?
Yes.
Because it's like, okay, the dad's stuff, let's just take the husband of the situation, then does 50% go to each one? Is anything accrued in marriage just to benefit, if let's say they don't look at each child truly as a second child, right, or a third child? It's going to get complicated,
Yeah.
and that's the reason that you have to be careful, because we we don't want to put our spouses in a situation where it's like, I'm just going to leave the everything to the wife or everything to the husband, and he or she'll take care of it.
No.
Because that is, number one, that's unfair to them, and that's putting them in a bad position, because
Yeah.
ultimately they control everything at that point. Now, what happens is, and it's unfortunate, but it does tend to happen, what are the options of the spouse that's inheriting the assets? They can either spend them, because maybe, obviously, if they're, let's say you're in retirement and the surviving spouse is, say, 60, 65 years old. Well, chances are they could need those assets to spend to support their lifestyle. Or maybe they say, you know what, I want to gift some of them early. Well, that's entirely possible, but are they going to be fair, or are they going to do 50 in the middle, 25 and 25? Or they, is the child that was thought of as a actual biological, not biological child now going to get the share that he or she would have? We hope, but is that likely? It in some cases it may or may not happen. So
Yeah.
there's no legal obligation. I guess my point is, Tony, there's no legal obligation for the surviving spouse to preserve assets for children unless it's structured.
Yeah.
And if that was the case, let's face it, I hate to say this, it's not about distrust, it's about human nature. And as they age, think about the stressors and the things they're going to deal with 20 years down the road that you haven't even thought about, that are going to potentially change that game. What happens if the child from the first marriage of the husband maybe was not as attentive whenever that stepmother went into a facility or a nursing home, and they're like, whoa, well, they didn't take care of me, so they're gone. It happens all the time. So when you see that happen, that's where trust could really come into play, because then you could say, you know what, just to make sure everything stays and is fair, and we don't have to worry about second and third marriages later on, because let's face it, if a spouse loses their spouse at 60 or 65, what's the likelihood they could get remarried? It's entirely possible. Well, then that now completely complicates the situation.
Yeah.
A trust could really clean a lot of that up, because the first marriage, or then second marriage, it's getting complicated. The second marriage could literally say, or the husband could say, you know what, I want my trust to inherit my assets, and my wife's going to get a QTIP, qualified terminal interest property trust, where they can either, as long as they're in need of it, they can use the home, anything the home, if it's sold or whatever, this goes to this person, this goes to that person. Or if the spouse passes away, whenever it's finally sold, this is how the assets are to be finally distributed. Or things like the IRAs. IRAs are they're kind of set and forget, because they don't have a 10-year rule now, so not as big of an issue. But life insurance proceeds. We talked about after-tax accounts, about inheriting assets that are not IRA related or retirement income related. These are all things that a trust could go ahead and take a lot of that out. Let the spouse have income until he or she passes away, and then at the death of that spouse, then that means the other children that maybe would hopefully not be omitted, but maybe could have been omitted, were guaranteed not to be omitted. So when you don't plan for these types of things, blended families become extremely vulnerable to accidental disinheritance, unequal treatment, litigation between surviving spouse and children, because things change, personalities change, etc. And then it leads to emotional fractures, like I said, and I described personally, that's going to last for decades. And it's just not something we want to do. We want to preserve that relationship. We don't want to just let it go by the wayside. And I'll finish with this, Tony, and I'm going to wrap it up. Why planning is an act of love is because it isn't about preparing for death so much as it is about reducing the chaos. It's about saying a couple things. I care enough about you not to leave you confused. I care enough about you not to make you fight. I care enough about you to make this simple. You know, when you plan properly, you are essentially doing a number of things. You're reducing taxes. You're avoiding unnecessary probate, making it public. You're protecting minor children. You're safeguarding if you have special needs children, if you have special needs beneficiaries. That needs to be significantly thought through, because what if you leave assets, Tony, improperly that jeopardizes benefits that they're going to receive in the future? That's a problem.
Yeah.
It protects businesses and keeps them from being sold at pennies on the dollar in a fire sale, because they have to have immediate liquidity to either buy out someone who is dissatisfied with their share, or maybe it provides an estate issue. And then all of a sudden you got Uncle Sam that say, hey, here, where's my 40%? And it all goes to maintaining family harmony, because when you pass away, that's going to be an extremely hard moment for your kids and your grandkids. And my questions to you to follow up on the previous are, would you want your family to feel clarity or confusion? Do you want them to feel protected or pressured? Should they feel guided or wander in the woods aimlessly, unguided and guessing? Your legacy isn't what you leave, it's how you leave it. So we talk about some things in the classes, and I talk about things with our clients that you need to have. One, you need to have an updated will. I say do it every 2 or 3 years. At least let your attorney take a look at it. Nothing's changed. Great. Pay a couple $100. You get some peace of mind. Powers of attorney need to be enforced, financial and medical. And I recommend don't name multiple, like don't have dual financial powers of attorney, or in some cases 3 financial powers of attorney equal, because then you got to get a signature from all 3 when something gets executed. Name one, name a backup, and name maybe a protector. Health directives. These are important. A properly structured trust if you need it. Tony, most people can get away with now. I'm going to say get away with. They can usually get everything they need with a revocable trust. A revocable trust is yes, in life, it's not going to provide you a lot of asset protection, where if you get sued, yes, it could be pierced if it's revocable, or if it's Medicaid planning, that's not going to fly. But if you already have those things prepared for, maybe you don't need that. Maybe a revocable trust just says, okay, I don't need a will for most of my things, because the revocable trust is going to become irrevocable at death, and it's going to go ahead and push all those through probate, and we don't have to worry about it. But when you plan, you're choosing not to panic. And more than anything, you're choosing to have your kids in a position where they don't have to panic. So talk to an estate planning attorney, review your beneficiary designations, talk to your financial advisor. If they're not having these types of conversations with you, I'm sorry, I don't think they're doing their job, because these are hard conversations. Nobody likes to have them. But it's like going to your doctor. Sometimes you need to have them, because it's going to save your life, or it's going to save a lot of stress in the process. Planning for your estate does not have to be expensive. It needs to be intentional, right? And you always say, and I'm sure you have, I'll get to it next year. I'll do it then.
We like to put it off.
The one thing, we're at the beginning of this year. Don't let this year win. Be proactive, not reactive. And I promise you will thank me for it, and your kids will thank you for it.
Yeah, you don't want to leave your loved ones in a bad situation. If people have more questions about this, I want to talk. I know you have resources. You work with estate planning attorneys. How can they get a hold of you, Travis?
Absolutely, Tony. They can give us a call at 877-269-0839. That's 877-269-0839. Or visit us on the web, chancefinancialgroup.com. They can actually request an appointment right there. And we're going to continue to mention that we're in the middle of our class schedule for the spring. We just got done with our Savannah main campus, and we're going to be doing Pooler. We're going to be in Statesboro. We're going to be in Bluffton, South Carolina. So, folks, if you're in this area, you may want to consider, especially if you're 55 and over, you may want to consider giving yourself a few hours to sit down, get some information, get some answers to some questions, and maybe even get some questions you didn't know you needed to ask. Because once again, the more you prepare, the less you're going to leave volatility and turmoil behind.
All right. Sounds great. And Travis, great show. Listeners and viewers, thanks for tuning in. That does it for today's episode of Navigating Your Retirement with our host, Travis Chance.